I'm Monica, a 32-year-old elementary school teacher from Portland. I've always been the reliable one in my family, the person everyone counts on when things get tough. I was so excited about our upcoming family trip to Hawaii to celebrate my mom's 60th birthday. Well, at least I was until they uninvited me, but still expected me to watch all five of my nieces and nephews while they enjoyed paradise. Before I tell you how I ended up sipping margaritas on a completely different beach, while my family was frantically calling me, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever been taken advantage of by family. Being the middle child shaped my entire existence, while my older brother James got praise for being the firstborn, and my younger sister Amanda was the baby who could do no wrong. I existed in this strange middle ground of being simultaneously overlooked, yet expected to be the most responsible one. My mom, Diana, now 59, has always been loving in her way. She bakes my favorite cookies when I visit and calls to check on me regularly. But she's also enabled my siblings' selfish behavior for as long as I can remember, always making excuses for them while holding me to a higher standard. Monica is just so capable. She would tell relatives, which really meant I was the one who would drop everything to help when needed. My dad, Thomas 62, is more distant. He spends most of his time working or golfing and generally sides with whatever mom thinks. In our family, mom makes the social decisions and dad funds them. James is 36, married to Stephanie, and they have three incredibly energetic kids, Zach, who's 7, Lily, who's 5, and Emma, who's 3. James works in finance and never fails to mention his year-end bonus in conversation. Stephanie is nice enough one-on-one, but transforms into a momzilla in group settings, expecting everyone to accommodate her children's schedules and preferences. My younger sister Amanda is 28, married to Ryan, and they have 4-year-old twins, Mason and Mia. Amanda has always been mom's favorite. She calls mom daily, and somehow turned being a social media manager into a personality trait. Her husband Ryan is actually pretty decent, but he follows Amanda's lead in family matters. For as long as I can remember, I've been the one everyone calls when they need something. When James needed someone to pick up Zach from school when he had the flu, I took a half day off work. When Amanda needed a last-minute babysitter for the twins so she could attend an emergency nail appointment, I canceled my own plans. When mom needed help planning the annual family Christmas party, guess who stayed up until 2 a.m., tying little ribbons on party favors? The pattern was clear. My time, my plans, and my needs were considered less important than everyone else's. And for years, I accepted this role. I'm a people pleaser by nature. I became a teacher partly because I love helping others. But over time, this dynamic wore me down. 3 months ago, I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Winters. She helped me recognize how these patterns were affecting my mental health and encouraged me to start setting boundaries. Your value isn't determined by how useful you are to others, she told me in one session that left me crying for an hour afterward. It was like someone finally saw me. My modest one-bedroom apartment in Portland isn't much, but it's mine. I've decorated it with secondhand furniture and plants that somehow thrive despite my inconsistent watering schedule. Teaching fourth graders doesn't make me rich, but I love my job even though it's exhausting. Meanwhile, James lives in a 5-bedroom house in the suburbs with a swimming pool that I've been invited to use exactly twice in the 3 years they've had it. Amanda and Ryan just bought a condo downtown that costs more than I make in 2 years. The contrast between our lives sometimes feels like a physical weight on my chest. Last Thanksgiving, I spent the entire day watching all 5 kids while everyone else enjoyed drinks and conversation. James had promised to take over after dinner so I could have some adult time, but he conveniently forgot. When I reminded him, he said, just give me 5 more minutes, which turned into 2 hours. At Christmas, I was voluntold to drive 3 hours to the airport to pick up our grandparents, while everyone else decorated the house and baked cookies. I missed the entire family decorating tradition that I actually love, only to return and be asked to wrap all the presents because you do such a beautiful job with the ribbons, Monica. For Amanda's birthday in March, I organized a surprise party, baked her favorite cake, and created a slideshow of family photos. My birthday in April was acknowledged with a group text and a gift card to a restaurant chain that doesn't even exist in Portland. My friend Sarah has witnessed all of this for years. We've been friends since college, and she's been telling me to stand up for myself since the first family story I shared with her. Your family treats you like their personal assistant, not their sister or daughter. She told me recently over wine at her place. You need to start saying no before you completely lose yourself. Little did I know how prophetic her words would be, or that my opportunity to finally stand up for myself was just around the corner. The family trip to Hawaii was first announced 6 months ago during a Sunday dinner at my parents' house. Mom had always dreamed of celebrating her 60th birthday somewhere tropical, and Dad had finally agreed to make it happen. "We're going to Maui for a week," Mom announced, clapping her hands together like an excited child. "Thomas has rented a beautiful house near the beach, and we want the whole family there to celebrate." My heart leaped at the prospect. I had never been to Hawaii before. The farthest I'd ever traveled was to a teaching conference in Chicago 3 years ago, and that was hardly a vacation. "We're thinking the last week of June," Dad added. "So everyone start planning now." That timing was perfect for me. As a teacher, I would be on summer break. While my salary is spread throughout the year to provide consistent income, I wouldn't have the extra income from tutoring during summer, but I was determined to make it work. That very night, I created a savings plan. I would need to put aside $400 each month to cover my share of the accommodation's flight food and activities. It would be tight but doable if I cut back on basically everything else. I picked up extra tutoring sessions after school and on weekends. Some Saturdays, I would tutor from 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, coming home so mentally drained, I could barely follow the plot of whatever show I put on Netflix before falling asleep on the couch. By April, I had saved enough for my flight and accommodation contribution. I still needed spending money, so I continued my tutoring through the spring. I canceled my small gym membership and started jogging in the park instead. I learned to make coffee at home rather than stopping at my favorite cafe. Every dollar I saved went into my Hawaii fund. One particularly exciting day in May, I went shopping for vacation clothes. It was the first time I'd bought new clothes in almost a year, and the splurge felt both terrifying and thrilling. I found a turquoise swimsuit that actually made me feel confident, a few sundresses, and a wide-brimmed hat to protect my fair skin from the Hawaiian sun. I spent evenings researching Maui attractions, making lists of must-see places and activities that would work for both adults and children. I learned about the road to Hana, the 7 sacred pools, and the best spots for first-time snorkelers. I read restaurant reviews and made note of places that could accommodate our large group and the kids' picky eating habits. Our family group text was filled with excitement. I shared links to potential activities, and everyone responded with enthusiasm. "Monica always thinks of everything," Mom texted after I sent information about a luau that welcomed children and had vegetarian options for Amanda. I requested the week off from my summer school position months in advance, which wasn't easy. Summer school positions are coveted by teachers for the extra income, and taking time off meant someone else would need to cover my classes. But my principal understood this was an important family event and approved my request. I reserved my flight after confirming the exact dates with everyone. I chose a seat near the window, already imagining the view of the ocean as we descended into Maui. I sent my share of the rental house cost to my dad via Venmo, wincing at how my account balance dropped, but reminding myself this once-in-a-lifetime trip would be worth it. Mom had planned her birthday dinner at a beachfront restaurant with sunset views. I researched the perfect gift for her, eventually settling on a delicate silver bracelet, with birthstones representing each family member. It cost more than I would typically spend on a gift, but this was a milestone birthday, and I wanted it to be special. As June approached, my excitement grew. I started a packing list, bought travel-sized toiletries, and even practiced snorkeling techniques in my bathtub, which was ridiculous, but made me laugh at myself. But about a month before the trip, I noticed something odd. The family group chat would sometimes go quiet for hours after I asked a question about our plans. Then conversation would resume on a completely different topic. Once or twice I saw responses that seemed like they were answering questions I hadn't seen asked. I brushed it off as glitchy group texts or conversations happening when I was teaching and couldn't check my phone. It never occurred to me that they might be having separate conversations without me. I should have recognized the warning signs, but I was too caught up in my excitement about finally taking a real vacation with my family to notice the subtle shift occurring right under my nose. The uninvitation came 3 weeks before the trip at a family dinner at my parents' house. We were having lasagna, my mom's specialty, and I had brought a homemade tiramisu for dessert that took me 3 hours to prepare. The conversation flowed normally through dinner, everyone talking about work and the kids' end of school activities. I was sharing a funny story about my student's science project gone wrong when I noticed James and Amanda exchanging looks across the table. After we finished eating, Mom served coffee, and that's when James cleared his throat in that way he does before saying something he thinks is important. So, about Hawaii, he began, not quite meeting my eyes. We've been looking at the sleeping arrangements at the house, and it's a bit tight. I nodded, assuming he was going to suggest I share a room with one of the kids, which I was perfectly fine with. That's okay, I don't mind bunking with Lily or one of the twins, I offered. Amanda jumped in, her voice overly sweet. Actually, we were thinking you might be more comfortable not staying at the house at all. The room went silent. I looked around at their faces, waiting for someone to laugh and say it was a joke. No one did. What do you mean? I finally asked, my coffee cup suspended halfway to my lips. Well, James continued, with all the kids and couples, the house is really at capacity. And it would be so much more convenient for everyone if someone could stay behind to watch the kids during Mom's birthday dinner and some of the adult activities. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The room seemed to tilt slightly as the implications of what they were saying sank in. You want me to not go to Hawaii after I've already bought my plane ticket and paid for my share of the house? My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. Mom reached over and patted my hand. Honey, we know it's disappointing, but the kids really love their Aunt Monica, and it would be such a help. Dad stared into his coffee cup, avoiding eye contact completely. But this is a family trip, I said, hating how my voice trembled. I'm family too. Of course you are, Amanda said quickly. That's why we need you. The kids would be miserable with some stranger babysitting them. The truth dawned on me with horrifying clarity. They hadn't just decided I shouldn't stay at the house. They had decided I shouldn't go to Hawaii at all. Instead, I should stay behind and watch 5 children under the age of 8 while they all enjoyed the trip I had been saving for and dreaming about for 6 months. When did you all decide this? I asked, looking from face to face. The guilty expressions told me everything. You've been planning this for a while, haven't you? We just want Mom's birthday to be special, James said defensively. And someone needs to watch the kids during the dinner and excursions. So, hire a babysitter, I suggested, a rare flicker of defiance rising in me. In Hawaii, do you know how expensive that would be? Amanda looked genuinely shocked at the suggestion, as if spending money on childcare was an outrageous concept. More expensive than my plane ticket that I already bought. More expensive than the money I contributed to the rental house. My hands were shaking now. Mom jumped in, clearly trying to smooth things over. Monica, sweetie, we know it's not ideal, but everyone agrees this is the best solution. We'll bring you back a beautiful souvenir, and maybe next time we can arrange things differently. Next time. As if there would be a next time after this betrayal. As if a souvenir could make up for missing Mom's milestone birthday celebration that I had been looking forward to for months. I see, I said quietly, setting down my coffee cup because I was afraid I might drop it. And where exactly am I supposed to stay while I'm watching all 5 kids? You could stay at our house, James offered as if he was doing me a favor. That way the kids would be in their own environment for part of the time, and then you could bring them to Amanda's for a few days too to mix things up. Not only was I uninvited from the trip, but I was expected to house hop between my siblings' homes while caring for their children. The audacity was breathtaking. And you all decided this without talking to me first, without even asking if I would be willing to do this. My voice had taken on an edge I rarely used with my family. We knew you'd understand, Amanda said confidently. You're always so good with the kids and so helpful. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I declined dessert, saying I didn't feel well, which wasn't a lie. I felt physically ill. Mom packed up some tiramisu for me to take home, as if that could sweeten the bitter pill I had just been forced to swallow. The drive home was terrible. Tears streamed down my face as I navigated through traffic, nearly missing my turn, because I could barely see through the blur. Once inside my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and collapsed on my bed, still in my dinner clothes, and sobbed until my throat was raw and my pillow was soaked. That night, I cried myself to sleep for the first time since my college boyfriend cheated on me. The pain felt similar, that same sense of betrayal and worthlessness. But this was worse because it came from the people who were supposed to love me most. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a group text from James. "So, Monica, we were thinking you could drive the kids to the airport on Tuesday the 25th and pick us up the following Monday. That works, right?" It was followed by a text from Stephanie with a detailed list of what to pack for each child and their bedtime routines. No acknowledgement of what had happened the night before. No recognition of how inappropriate their request was. Just the assumption that, of course, I would do as they asked, because I always did. As I scrolled through the messages in disbelief, another text came through from Amanda. "Oh, and can you stay at James's house the whole week? The twins are more comfortable in their own beds, so it would be easier if you brought them back to our place during the days but didn't do overnights there." They expected me to commute between houses with 5 children. They expected me to chauffeur them to and from the airport. They expected me to give up my vacation time to provide free childcare. And not one of them had offered to reimburse me for my plane ticket or my contribution to the rental house. I called Sarah immediately, barely able to get the words out between renewed sobs. "They did what?" Her outrage on my behalf was validating. "Monica, this is not okay. This is so far from okay. I can't even see okay from here." "What should I do?" I asked her, genuinely at a loss. "Well, I know what you shouldn't do," she said firmly. "You should absolutely not agree to this outrageous request. In fact, if I were you, I'd tell them all to pound sand and take myself on a vacation instead." At that moment, the seed of an idea was planted, one that would soon grow into the most liberating decision of my life. For the first few days after the bombshell dinner, I was in shock. I cycled through disbelief, hurt, and anger as I went through the motions at work. My fourth graders noticed something was wrong, and one sweet girl named Jasmine even brought me a handmade card that said, "Feel better soon, Ms. Jackson." At night, I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying years of similar incidents where my family had taken advantage of my giving nature. There was the time James asked me to dog sit his Labrador for a weekend that turned into 10 days because they decided to extend their trip. Or when Amanda called me at 11 p.m. to come over because one of the twins had a fever, and she just couldn't handle it alone, while Ryan was on a business trip. The pattern was clear, but I had never found the courage to break it. Until now. After a week of sleepless nights and growing resentment, I called Sarah again. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her, "about taking my own trip." "Yes," she practically cheered. "That's exactly what you should do. Turn lemons into margaritas, girl." "But what about the kids?" I asked, the weight of responsibility still heavy on my shoulders despite everything. "They're expecting me to watch them." "Monica, listen to me," Sarah said firmly. "Those are not your children. You did not choose to have them. Their parents did, and their parents are responsible for their care, not you. I know you love your nieces and nephews, but this is not your problem to solve." She was right, and deep down I knew it. I just needed someone to give me permission to prioritize myself for once. That evening, I researched the cancellation policy for my Hawaii flight. As expected, I would lose most of the money if I canceled outright. But I discovered I could change the destination for a change fee of $200, which was still less than losing the entire fare. Where would I go instead? I browsed destinations absent-mindedly until a photo of a Key West sunset caught my eye. Florida. Beaches, sunshine, relaxation, but on the opposite side of the country from where my family would be. It felt symbolically perfect. I found a beachfront hotel that was running a summer special. It was still more than I would typically spend, but I had been saving for this vacation, and by God, I was going to have one. With slightly shaking hands, I changed my flight destination from Maui to Key West and booked a room for 5 nights at the southernmost beach resort. Once the initial reservation was made, a strange giddiness came over me. I began researching activities in Key West with the same enthusiasm I had once directed toward the family trip, but this time every choice was solely for my enjoyment. I booked a sunset sail, a dolphin watching tour, and even a parasailing adventure that both terrified and excited me. The guilt came in waves. What if the kids were upset that Aunt Monica wasn't there? What if something went wrong while my family was away? What if this permanently damaged my relationship with them? But each time the guilt threatened to overwhelm me, I reminded myself of how they had made me feel. They had uninvited me from a family celebration, expected me to provide free childcare, and hadn't even offered to reimburse me for my expenses. They had taken me for granted once too often. My mom called 3 days after the dinner, her voice tentative. "Monica, honey, I just wanted to check in. You seemed upset when you left dinner the other night." I almost laughed at the understatement. "Yes, Mom, I was upset. I still am. I know it's disappointing about Hawaii, but we really do need you here with the kids." "Need me or just need my free babysitting services?" The words came out before I could stop them. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "That's not fair, Monica. We're a family, and family helps each other." "Yes, we are a family. That's why I spent 6 months saving for this trip to celebrate your birthday in Hawaii with you. That's why I already bought my plane ticket and paid for my portion of the house. That's why I requested time off work, because I thought I was part of this family, not just the family babysitter." "Of course you're part of the family," Mom said, sounding hurt. "But sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the greater good." "And it's always me making the sacrifices, isn't it? Never James or Amanda, always Monica." "That's not true," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "When was the last time either of them sacrificed anything for me, or for you for that matter?" The silence on the other end told me she couldn't come up with an example. "I'm sorry you feel that way," she finally said, the standard non-apology that parents use when they don't want to admit they're wrong. I almost caved then. Almost told her I would do it, that I would watch the kids and drive everyone to the airport, and be the perfect, accommodating Monica I had always been. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but then I remembered Dr. Winters telling me, "You teach people how to treat you." If I gave in now, nothing would ever change. "I'm sorry too, Mom. I hope you have a wonderful birthday." I hung up without agreeing to their plan, which was a small act of defiance but significant for me. I didn't tell her about my alternative plans. I wasn't ready to share that yet, partly because I was still afraid I might lose my nerve. The next day, I had my regular appointment with Dr. Winters. I told her everything that had happened and my plan to go to Key West instead. "How does that decision make you feel?" she asked, her expression neutral. "Terrified," I admitted. "Excited, guilty, liberated, all of the above." She nodded. "Those are all normal reactions when we start setting boundaries, especially with family. The guilt is your conditioning talking the voice that says your needs matter less than everyone else's. The excitement and sense of liberation. That's your authentic self finally getting some oxygen." "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" I needed the validation, even though I knew the decision was mine alone. "I think you're doing the right thing for you," she said carefully. "And that's what matters most in this situation. You're not abandoning young children in a dangerous situation. You're simply declining to be taken advantage of, which is healthy and appropriate." As my trip approached, I made careful preparations. I decided I would turn my phone off completely once I was on the plane to Key West. I didn't want the barrage of texts and calls to ruin my first real vacation in years. I would check in briefly every couple of days, just to make sure there wasn't a genuine emergency. But otherwise, I would be unreachable. The plan was set. For once in my life, I was choosing myself over my family's demands. And despite the anxiety it provoked, it also felt incredibly right. The day before the family's scheduled departure arrived, and my phone buzzed constantly with last-minute instructions and reminders. James called that morning to confirm I would be at his house that evening. "The kids are excited for their sleepover with Aunt Monica," he said cheerfully, as if this was a fun treat I had requested rather than an obligation they were imposing on me. "Stephanie has the guest room all ready for you." "That's nice," I said noncommittally, neither confirming nor denying that I would be there. In the afternoon, Stephanie called with what she called a quick rundown of the kids' schedules, which turned into a 30-minute monologue about bedtime's food allergies, screen time rules, and the precise temperature at which each child preferred their bathwater. "Zach won't eat anything green, but don't tell him we let him get away with that," she said conspiratorially. "Lily needs her special blanket for naps, and Emma still sometimes wets the bed, so make sure she goes to the bathroom right before bedtime." I made appropriate listening noises while packing my suitcase for Key West, not the overnight bag I would have needed for my brother's house. I had chosen my outfits carefully, including my new turquoise swimsuit that I had originally bought for Hawaii. It felt slightly rebellious to pack it for a different beach. Oh, and one more thing, Stephanie added just as I thought the call was ending. We're dropping Buddy at the house on our way to the airport tomorrow. His food is in the pantry and he needs to go out at least 3 times a day. Buddy? I asked, momentarily confused. Our dog, the Labrador Monica, you've watched him before. That was the final straw. They had added dog sitting to my responsibilities without even asking if I was okay with it. Not that it mattered now since I wouldn't be there, but the assumption was infuriating. Right, buddy, I said, keeping my voice neutral despite the rage building inside me. Got it. After hanging up, I sat on my bed next to my packed suitcase and took several deep breaths. I was really going to do this. I was going to stand up for myself in a way I never had before. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I decided I would turn my phone off at exactly 9 a.m. the next morning when my flight to Key West was scheduled to depart. By then, my family would be at the airport with all their children and luggage, realizing I wasn't coming to drive them as planned. It would be too late for them to change their arrangements easily. That night, I barely slept. Every time my phone buzzed with another text message from my family, my heart raced with a mixture of anxiety and defiant excitement. There was a freedom in knowing that by this time tomorrow, I would be on my way to a completely different destination than anyone expected. The morning arrived bright and clear. I showered, dressed, and called a rideshare to take me to the airport. As I locked my apartment door, I felt like I was leaving behind not just my physical space, but also the old Monica who always said yes, who always put herself last. At the airport, I checked in for my flight to Key West, a thrill running through me as the gate agent handed me my boarding pass. Enjoy Florida, she said with a smile, having no idea what this simple trip meant to me. I found a seat at my gate and waited, watching the time. At 8:30, my phone started ringing. It was James. I let it go to voicemail. Then Amanda called, then James again. I watched the notifications pile up but didn't answer. At 8:45, a text from my mother. Monica, where are you? James said you never showed up last night and you're not answering your phone. I could picture the scene at their house, or perhaps they were already at the airport. 5 overtired children, luggage everywhere, parents increasingly frantic as they realized their childcare plan had fallen through. Part of me felt guilty, but a stronger part felt vindicated. For once, they were experiencing the consequences of their assumptions and poor planning. At precisely 9 a.m., as boarding for my flight began, I turned off my phone completely. The silence was immediate and profound. No more buzzing, no more demands, no more guilt trips. Just me making a choice for myself. As the plane took off, I looked out the window at Portland disappearing beneath me. I felt a moment of worry, wondering if I was making a huge mistake that would permanently damage my family relationships. But then I remembered how easily they had discarded my feelings, how readily they had assumed I would sacrifice my vacation for their convenience, and my resolve strengthened. 4 hours and 1 connection later, I stepped off the plane in Key West into bright sunshine and humid, salty air. I caught a taxi to my hotel, an elegant property right on the beach with swaying palm trees and the sound of waves greeting me as I checked in. "Welcome to the southernmost beach resort, Ms. Jackson," the receptionist said warmly. "We have you in an ocean view room for 5 nights. Is this your first time in Key West?" "Yes, it is," I replied, feeling lighter than I had in months. My first real vacation in years, actually. "Well, you've picked a perfect spot for it," she assured me. "Would you like a complimentary welcome drink? We have margaritas or fruit punch." "A margarita would be perfect," I said, accepting the salt-rimmed glass she offered. As I took my first sip, standing in the beautiful open-air lobby with my suitcase beside me, I felt something unfamiliar but wonderful pride in myself for finally setting a boundary. I made my way to my room, which was even more beautiful than the photos online had suggested. A private balcony overlooked the ocean. The bed was enormous and plush with pillows, and a welcome basket contained local treats and sunscreen. It was paradise, and I had chosen it for myself. That first evening, I walked along the beach at sunset, watching the sky turn spectacular shades of pink and orange. I had dinner alone at a waterfront restaurant, ordering exactly what I wanted, without considering anyone else's preferences. I went to bed early in my big, comfortable hotel bed, sleeping more soundly than I had in weeks. For 2 full days, my phone remained off. I swam in the ocean, read books by the pool, and took a guided tour of Ernest Hemingway's house, admiring the six-toed cats that roamed the property. I ate key lime pie and fresh seafood, and drank fruity cocktails with paper umbrellas in them. I took selfies of myself smiling genuinely for the first time in months. On the third day, a twinge of curiosity and lingering responsibility made me turn my phone back on briefly. The flood of notifications was immediate and overwhelming: 87 missed calls, over 140 text messages, voicemails, emails, even notifications from social media, where family members had apparently been trying to reach me. I scrolled through the texts, watching the progression from confusion to anger to desperation. James, 8:47 a.m., day of departure. Monica, where are you? We're waiting at the house. Amanda, 9:02 a.m. This isn't funny, Monica. We're going to miss our flight if you don't show up soon. Mom, 9:15 a.m. Honey, please call us. We're worried about you. James, 9:30 a.m. Had to call an airport shuttle. Cost me $200. Thanks a lot. Amanda, 10:22 a.m. I can't believe you would be so irresponsible. The kids are asking for you. What are we supposed to tell them? The messages continued growing increasingly frantic as they realized I wasn't just late, I was completely absent. James Day, 2. Look, if this is about Hawaii, we can talk about it when we get back. But you can't just disappear like this. Mom, Day 2. Monica, please just let us know you're okay. I'm really worried. Dad, Day 2. Your mother is upset. Call home. It was rare to get a direct message from my father, which showed how seriously they were taking my disappearance. Good. By the third day, the tone had shifted again. Ames, Day 3. If you're trying to teach us a lesson, fine, you've made your point. But this is extreme. Amanda, Day 3. Mom's birthday dinner is tomorrow, and she's a mess because she's worried about you. Thanks for ruining her birthday. James at A3. I'll pay you for watching the kids if that's what this is about. Just call us. The desperation in that last text almost made me laugh out loud. Now he was offering to pay me. After expecting me to provide free childcare for 5 kids, plus a dog for a week, Sarah had been keeping me updated through separate texts, reporting on the family chaos with barely concealed glee. Your brother had to pay for last-minute airport shuttles both ways, she informed me, and they had to hire a local babysitter for the kids at $30 an hour so they could attend your mom's birthday dinner. James is livid about the cost. She also sent screenshots of vague, concerned posts my family had made on social media. Has anyone heard from my sister Monica? Please ask her to call home if you see her. As if I were a missing person rather than an adult woman who had simply stopped answering her phone. Sarah had called my school principal to ensure no one filed a missing persons report, discreetly explaining that I was fine but taking some much-needed personal time. My principal, who had seen me stay late countless times to help students and knew how much I gave to others, was completely understanding. According to Sarah's intelligence gathering from mutual acquaintances, my parents had missed the first 2 days of activities in Hawaii because they were so worried about me. James and Amanda had been forced to hire an expensive last-minute babysitter, recommended by the rental house owner, and Mom's special birthday dinner had been overshadowed by family tension. My Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, had apparently taken my side in the family debate that erupted. If you all uninvited her from the trip, but still expected her to watch all the kids, what did you think would happen? She had reportedly asked at the birthday dinner, causing Amanda to storm out in tears. The family vacation that they had so carefully planned, the one I had been excluded from, was falling apart because of my absence. I should have felt bad about that, and part of me did. But mostly I felt a sense of justice. For once, they were experiencing the consequences of their actions. I had a video call with Sarah that evening from my hotel balcony, the sunset creating a gorgeous backdrop as I sipped a glass of wine. You should see their faces in the family photos they've posted. Sarah laughed. Everyone looks stressed out and miserable. Amanda keeps posting these forced having the best time captions, but you can see the tension in every picture. I do feel a little bad about ruining Mom's birthday, I admitted. You didn't ruin anything, Sarah said firmly. They ruined it themselves by treating you like garbage. You're just refusing to be treated that way, which is healthy and long overdue. After our call, I decided to send a brief text to the family group chat, just enough to let them know I was safe without revealing my location. I'm fine, taking some personal time. We'll be in touch when I return home next week. The responses were immediate. Mom, thank God you're okay. Where are you? James, what the hell? Monica, do you know what you've put us through? Amanda, how could you be so selfish? I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I muted the conversation and went back to enjoying my vacation. I had said what I needed to say, and I wasn't going to let their reactions pull me back into the unhealthy dynamic I was trying to escape. For the next 2 days, I continued my solo adventure in Key West, experiencing a freedom and joy I hadn't felt in years. And with each new experience, I felt myself growing stronger, more confident, and more determined never to go back to being the family doormat again. My time in Key West was transformative in ways I hadn't anticipated. Beyond the beautiful beaches and tourist attractions, I found something I had been missing for years myself. On my third day, I booked a spot on a sunset sailing cruise. As I boarded the catamaran, a friendly couple about my age invited me to sit with them. Are you here alone? The woman Jessica asked without judgment in her voice. Yes, it's my first solo vacation, I replied, surprised at the note of pride in my voice. That's awesome, her husband Mark said. Jessica and I try to take solo trips once a year, even though we're married. It's healthy to have adventures on your own. We spent the evening chatting and watching the spectacular sunset together. They were from Chicago, both teachers like me, and we exchanged contact information before parting ways. My first new friendship in years, made entirely on my own terms. The hotel bar became another unexpected source of connection. The bartender Gabriel was in his 50s with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent a lifetime in the sun. After serving me my second piña colada one evening, he asked, "What brought you to Key West all by yourself?" Something about his kind eyes and gentle manner made me share the whole story. He listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding in understanding. When I finished, he slid another drink across the bar. "On the house," he said, "for finally choosing yourself." Do you think I'm a terrible person for abandoning my family like that? I asked, the lingering guilt still gnawing at me despite everything. Gabriel shook his head. I've been tending bar for 30 years, heard thousands of stories. What I've learned is that people who worry about being terrible usually aren't. It's the ones who never question themselves you gotta watch out for. He shared his own story of setting boundaries with his brother, who had repeatedly asked for loans that were never repaid. It wasn't easy, and he didn't speak to me for 2 years. But when he came back into my life, it was on much healthier terms. Sometimes the relationships that survive these moments of truth end up stronger than before. His words stayed with me long after I left the bar that night. The parasailing adventure I had booked terrified me right up until the moment my feet left the boat, and I was soaring above the crystal blue waters. The initial fear gave way to an incredible sense of freedom, as I floated above the world, seeing everything from a new perspective. It felt like a metaphor for what was happening in my life, the scary step into the unknown, resulting in a breathtaking new view. Each evening, I would sit on my balcony with my journal, writing down my thoughts and feelings about the day. I had started journaling at Dr. Winter's suggestion months ago, but these entries felt different. Instead of cataloging hurts and frustrations, I was documenting joy growth and new insights about myself. Today, I realized I like spicy food. I wrote one evening. I've always ordered mild everything because James can't handle spice, and we often shared dishes as kids. Mom would make separate meals for him, but expected me to adapt. Just one more way I learned to shrink myself to accommodate others. These small revelations continued throughout my stay, each one helping me understand how I had been conditioned to put others first, often at significant cost to myself. On my last morning in Key West, I walked along the beach at sunrise, watching the sky lighten and feeling a similar lightness in my soul. I was nervous about returning home and facing my family, but I was no longer afraid. Whatever happened, I knew I could handle it because I had finally found my voice. Back in Portland, I braced myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. I had texted my family my arrival time, and unsurprisingly, they were all waiting at my apartment when I got home, their faces a mixture of relief, anger, and confusion. "Where were you?" Mom asked, immediately pulling me into a tight hug before holding me at arm's length to examine me, as if checking for visible injuries. "I went to Key West," I said simply. "I took a vacation." "While we were worried sick about you," James demanded, his face flushed with anger. "We thought something had happened to you." "I texted you that I was fine," I reminded him calmly. "And I'm an adult. I don't need permission to turn off my phone and take a trip." "But what about the kids?" Amanda asked, her voice high with indignation. "We were counting on you." "That's the problem," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. "You were counting on me without asking me. You uninvited me from a family vacation I had saved for months to attend, but still expected me to rearrange my life to provide free childcare. That's not okay." "We didn't uninvite you," Mom protested weakly. "We just needed someone to watch the kids. And it never occurred to any of you that I might want to be included in the actual celebration, rather than left behind as the babysitter," I asked, keeping my voice level. "That I might have feelings about being excluded from a family trip I had already paid for." The silence that followed told me they had never considered my perspective at all. They had simply assumed, as they always had, that my needs and wants would be sacrificed for their convenience. "I've spent my entire life trying to be helpful and accommodating," I continued, finding strength in finally speaking my truth. "And in return, you've treated me like my time is less valuable, my feelings are less important, and my presence is only wanted when it's useful to you." "That changes now." Mom started crying, then quiet tears that would normally have made me immediately backtrack and apologize. But not this time. This time, I stood my ground. "I'm not saying I don't want to be part of this family," I explained more gently. "I'm just saying that from now on, I need to be treated as an equal member, not the family utility player who gets called in whenever someone needs something but is benched when it's time to celebrate." Dad, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. "We didn't realize you felt this way, Monica." "I've been trying to tell you in 1,000 small ways for years," I replied. "But this time I needed you to hear me loud and clear." They left shortly after, each in a different emotional state. Mom was tearful and apologetic. Dad was quiet and thoughtful. James was still angry, but slightly subdued. And Amanda was indignant, but less confident in her righteousness than when she had arrived. The following weeks weren't easy. There were awkward family dinners and tense phone calls. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to change. 6 months after the Hawaii incident, I was at a family dinner when James asked if I could watch the kids the following weekend, so he and Stephanie could attend a wedding. "I'm sorry, I already have plans," I said, which was true. I had tickets to a concert with Sarah. In the past, this would have led to pressure and guilt trips until I canceled my own plans. But this time James just nodded and said, "No problem. I'll ask around for another sitter." Mom looked at me across the table and gave a small, proud smile. She and I had had several long conversations in the months since Hawaii. And while she didn't fully understand my perspective, she was trying. That meant more than she knew. A year after the Hawaii trip, Mom and Dad started planning a family weekend at the Oregon coast for Thanksgiving. Mom called me specifically to make sure the date worked for me before booking anything. "We want everyone there, including you," she emphasized. "And we'll hire a local sitter for one evening so all the adults can have dinner together." The fact that they were willing to pay for childcare rather than automatically expecting me to provide it was a small but significant victory. My relationship with James and Amanda took longer to repair. James eventually came around, especially after I helped him through a work crisis, and he realized that I was still there for him when it really mattered, just not at the expense of my own well-being. Amanda remained more distant, but even she began to show more respect for my time and boundaries. The most surprising changes, however, happened in other areas of my life. With my newfound confidence, I applied for and received a promotion at school to lead teacher for my grade. I started dating again, no longer willing to accept the crumbs of attention I had settled for in previous relationships. I created new traditions for myself, including an annual solo trip during spring break. Sometimes I invited Sarah or other friends to join me for part of the time, but I always reserved at least a few days just for myself. Dr. Winters was right, setting boundaries didn't destroy my family relationships. It transformed them into healthier, more balanced connections, where my needs were considered alongside everyone else's. It wasn't perfect, and there were still occasional slips into old patterns, but the overall dynamic had shifted significantly. The lesson I learned from that failed family trip wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about self-respect and the importance of teaching people how to treat you. Sometimes you have to walk away even from the people you love to show them your worth. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do both for yourself and for others is to say no. As I look back on that turning point in my life, I realized that what seemed like a catastrophe at the time was actually the beginning of my liberation. By uninviting me from that trip, my family inadvertently gave me the push I needed to find my voice and my value. And for that, despite everything, I'm grateful. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family or friends? What happened when you finally stood up for yourself? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you for listening, and I hope my story helps you find the courage to honor your own worth.